Farrell's off-the-ball defense in this game was much tighter than college teams played in 1954. Long outside shot and a tip in.
See, that's the kind of pass we wanted him to make.
Tremendous catch and finish by Wilt Chamberlain. His balance is amazing. 17-year-old big man didn't have those skills in 1954. Nothing like this had ever been seen in high school basketball. Wilt catches the ball in the air. Now that would be goaltending in contemporary basketball, but that goaltending rule had not been put into effect at that point. This game was really won on the foul line in the fourth quarter by Farrell. It's a shot by Charlie Kemp.
There were a lot of questionable calls by the officials on the Farrell court that upset my players.
Cecil, what were you telling the team? 56-56 with 2 minutes left.
Well, I wanted them to know how much time was left and how to move the ball so that we would get a good shot at that time.
In the late 50s, I spent some wonderful summers at Cutcher's Country Club in Monticello, New York, which is in the Catskill Mountains. I was the assistant athletic director, and Cutcher's had hired some novice basketball coach named Red Auerbach to be the director of the poker games and additionally coach the Cutcher's basketball team. In those days, all of the country clubs had the best players in the country competing against each other. Some of the country clubs were Grossinger's, Concord, and Nevele. The league was called the Borscht Belt. Red Auerbach and I spent a few wonderful summers together, and Wilt worked at Cutcher's as a bellhop. He would carry 4 suitcases at a time, and the patrons just loved him. He signed autographs all day long. The Cutcher's years were great.
The scenic Catskill Mountains in upstate New York. If you were part of New York City's middle and working class Jewish families in the 1950s, chances are you spent some of your summer at resort hotels like Grossinger's and the Concord. It was also the last place you'd expect to see a 7-foot black teenager from Philadelphia. But that's exactly where you'd find Wilt Chamberlain. And he was not alone.
Each hotel had a team made up of college players, high school players, ex-pros who worked at the hotel during the summer. Great summer jobs. The best program was at Cutcher's Country Club, which had Red Auerbach coaching.
I was the athletic director up there with Red Auerbach, and I told him about Wilt, that he would be a good bellhop.
Your sports commentator drove up to New York's Catskill Mountains to look in on tall timber, basketball timber, in the person of Wilt Chamberlain. He works as a bellhop, this 7-foot 1-inch giant. He can still grow, they tell us. A senior at Philadelphia's Overbrook High School, Chamberlain is an A student. The college and professional hoop scouts are hot on his trail.
Even at those hotels, he was a major attraction, and it was a good place to be seen.
One of those coaches who liked what he saw was Fog Allen of Kansas, a titan of the game who sent his son Mitt to the Catskills to try and lure Wilt to the Midwest.
Wilt really took a liking to Mitt, and Mitt told him all the good things about Kansas. And he said, well, we'll see. He wanted a suit of clothes, and Fogg had told us, absolutely, don't give him a dime. You'd make him ineligible. He was playing hard to get. We'd more or less given up on him. And when he took the court on Saturday, they introduced him as Wilt Chamberlain from Overbrook High School. He will attend the University of Kansas.
Wilt's decision to attend the University of Kansas came as a surprise. KU was one of the country's elite programs, but Wilt had been expected to stay somewhere safe, where he was comfortable, up north and in the east. Not only that, Lawrence, Kansas didn't exactly have the best reputation.
Recruiting Wilt was very much a Fog Allen project, but it was also a project of the black communities in Kansas City and in the eastern part of Kansas. They saw it as an opportunity to improve race relations in this part of the country.
In the urban center of Philadelphia, there's miles and miles of black neighborhoods. And so while there is racism and segregation in Philadelphia, it's not going to be as apparent as it is going to be in a town like Lawrence.
One day we finished practice and this guy starts talking to Wilt, and after 15 minutes the guy leaves, and I asked Wilt, who was that? He says, that was Abe Saperstein of the Globetrotters, and he just offered me 1/3 of the Globetrotters if I'd sign with him.
It was a match made in heaven. The Harlem Globetrotters and the 8th wonder of the world. So Wilt left Kansas and signed with the Trotters for the then astronomical sum of $65,000. When a reporter pointed out that was more money than the president made, Wilt joked he deserved it and said he could jump higher.
He got a very good offer from Abe Saperstein to join the Trotters, and he stayed with them for a year, and actually, for many summers thereafter, he would go to Europe with the Trotters and play with them.
He gloried in going to the Globetrotters because he could show that he could play that kind of basketball. Wilt wanted always to exhibit his diversity.
They had the whole comedy thing going with Metal Arc, and then Wilt was kind of like a counter to that, being the most dominant big man in the game.
They would go into that weave of theirs. They'd go in and out and everything. And then Metal Arc Lemon would drive down the lane and flip it over his head. And wherever he flipped it, Wilt was right behind it. And he got it, and he came in with these gargantuan dunks, and people would go crazy.
At that time, to see a guy dunk was amazing. Wilt was the show. He was what everybody was talking about.
Especially the men who ran the NBA.
At that time, our owner was Eddie Gottlieb, one of the founders of the league, very influential in the league.
Eddie Gottlieb was the mogul. That's what he was called in Philadelphia. Gottlieb decided he wanted Wilt. He wasn't going to trust the draft, and I don't know who he conned, but
Eddie, together with the other owners, decided it would be in the best interest of the league and the teams if they could have a lot of players from their own area.
He wiggled away in there because Wilt had played his high school ball in Philadelphia, and he became the territorial pick of the Warriors. They try that now, they'd run you out of town. The mogul was a master at that kind of stuff.
Wilt, Eddie Gottlieb is mighty happy to have you, a member of the Philadelphia Warriors. Do you feel that you are ready for this?
I think there will be a period of orientation for me, of course, like it is for every newcomer in the NBA, but I think in the long run, I'll be able to handle myself man-to-man with almost anyone in the league.
When Wilt came in, it was basically the dark ages of the NBA. They played in armories, they played in gymnasiums. Some of the places they played, it would be freezing cold. Take them to halftime before they'd break a sweat.
You know what the biggest draw in the NBA was? It was the Harlem Globetrotters. The Globies would come in, play the first half of a doubleheader, and they packed the place. And then the home team would play in the second game, and half the crowd would go home.
Wilt was one of the greatest shots in the arm that the league could possibly have, especially in Philadelphia, where Zinkoff, every time that Wilt dunked, he had a saying, "Dipper dunks." It was frenzy.
People didn't flock to these games to see George Mikan. Mikan was a big man, he was a good ball player, but everybody wanted to see Wilt.
It really was the circus come to town when the Warriors would play basketball.
Their phenomenal rookie star, Wilt Chamberlain, supplies most of the scoring punch to the Tribe attack. Wilt has been averaging 39 points a game.
He came into a league where no one had ever averaged 30 points a game. He averaged 37.6 for the season. It's like a rookie in baseball that year had come in not hitting 62 home runs, but 79. He shattered the record.
I think he scared people. He scared the opposition. He scared the other owners. They thought, my God, what are we going to do with this guy? He can come in here and score 35, 40 points at will.
And that's just what he did, winning the league's Rookie of the Year and Most Valuable Player awards while leading the Warriors from last place to the NBA playoffs.
When you talk about the greatest basketball player of all time, Wilt should be in the discussion. Michael Jordan hasn't come close to doing what Wilt did.
Do you ever do any of your work on ice skates?
No, not this year, not this year. Next year, maybe, not this year.
People forget that he was also a dominant track star.
There wasn't anything athletically that Wilt could not excel at.
Is it played indoors?
Yes.
Is it basketball?
Yes.
Wilt the Stilt?
Who was Wilt Chamberlain? He was a true, genuine American hero. He was the most dominant presence that I've ever seen. There was just this sense of hugeness.
Of all the people who ever played the game of basketball, Wilt Chamberlain stood head and shoulders above the rest, the Big Dipper. Wilt the Stilt, a man of enormous appetites and colossal ability.
I have in my possession a signed contract for him to fight Muhammad Ali. I mean, that was actually going to happen.
I'd accept your challenge as soon as I'm finished with a few more contenders, if I beat them.
Well, then I can't get your signature on that line, but
Just hold your pen. Don't rush things.
How long? How long?
Just quit. Don't start popping off.
I'm not popping, but I'd like to know how long.
When you start popping off, you'll be in trouble. Now, I'm going to take it easy with you. Just be cool.
But you can't tell me how long, though, can you? A man can only wait so long.
His personality.
I want my medal.
His individuality.
Wilt Chamberlain clears the bar at 6 feet 6 inches.
All of that went in to make him larger than life.
Why are you driving a Raptor?
Because it has more headroom than my Rolls Royce.
And a lot of big guys ain't lovable, I'm afraid, but he was.
It's TWA's new ambassador class to the East Coast, with enough room for anybody.
Even if you're 7'1" or taller. Taller. Little.
Even with his massive frame, his big beaming smile, and that 4,000 points in one NBA season.
When it comes to someone being the dominant force in the game, and his name is mentioned first.
The year that he said, I'm going to lead the league in assists, he did.
I don't care if you're playing against midgets. That's a lot of damn rebounds,
I knew that Wilt was eventually going to score 100 points in some game. He scored 90 for me in high school in 28 minutes. And he had 15 points in 1 minute in the high school game. So there was no doubt that one day, if a coach allowed him to do it, he was going to score 100 points. And it was the most exciting thing that anybody ever heard of. Yeah, and he was matter-of-fact about it. He says, oh, it was 100 points. I've scored 80. I'd scored 70. I just scored another couple more points. Oh, absolutely. How could it not mean, And if somebody got 101 points, in the next game he would go out and get 102 points. He wanted to be the best in every aspect of the game, and he was. It's impossible to describe. There was no way of stopping him. He could shoot and score by dunking the ball every time he wanted to, and there was no way of just understanding what the Knicks were trying to do. It was impossible. Unfortunately, it wasn't televised, and Bill Campbell was such a terrific announcer that he made it very exciting. And when he got 96 points and 98 points, and then when he scored the 100th point, the crowd went crazy. Everybody jumped up and screamed. It was the most exciting thing that anybody ever heard of. I watched him closely. I watched everything that he did. He always put out 100%. In whatever he wanted to do, whether he just wanted to be an assist man, or whether he just wanted to get rebounds, or whether he wanted to score, or whether he wanted to do all those things. And I could sense when he really was in the game, or when he was just going through the motions. The two memories really are the city championship games at the Palestra with 10,000 people in the stands, beating South Catholic, who was coached by Jack Kraft, and then beating West Catholic. And the excitement of being an undefeated city championship team is something that will live with me forever. And that how all 5 players played as a team. And it wasn't just Wilt Chamberlain, but it was all 5 players that participated. And the love of the players and my love for them that has lasted over the 50 years.
None more striking than the one he pulled off on a cold and dreary winter night in Hershey, Pennsylvania in 1962.
Nobody wanted to go to Hershey. Players didn't want to play there. It was a home game played away on the road. So everybody was a little annoyed to begin with.
It was kind of a slapstick night. I remember, too, the locker room. The locker room was terrible.
It was just a big room
a lot of brown benches set against the wall, and you had a row of wooden planks on the wall with spikes out of them that the players just hung their clothes on. It was very austere.
The shower room was small. I think there were 2 or 3 shower heads for all of us.
It was a hellhole. But for 3 games a year, it was home for the Warriors. It started to be a magical night from the beginning.
Wilt loved to go, whenever he went to Hershey, loved to go into the arcade.
Must have put $3 in quarters in.
He was shooting clay pigeons and he couldn't miss.
Bing, 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 bing.
That could have been an indication of something unusual was going to happen that night.
By halftime of that unusual night, Wilt scored 41, although that figure hardly raised an eyebrow.
Wilt scored so many points and so many games that year that I didn't even know how many points he had.
He was awesome from the foul line that night.
Bing, bing, like it was automatic. 28 for 32 was unreal.
Good God sometimes would take him 10 games to hit 28 free throws.
That was really the impetus for his having a great game.
When he got into the 60s, I decided to alert the PA announcer, Dave Zinkoff. I think we ought to call every point that Wilt gets over the PA system.
Chamberlain for 2.
Chamberlain has 71. He's within 2 of the record.
The excitement was the fact that Chamberlain had 73 in a regular game and 78 in an overtime game.
They're announcing the new record is 79, and during the announcement, Chamberlain goes right ahead through the announcement and makes a foul. They're still making the announcement, he makes another foul.
We started to get excited the last several minutes of the game.
He shoots this. Good! A deep back shot from 12 feet out to the left. He hit it.
His shot off the backboard that night, I'd say, accounted for most of his points.
1 minute and 1 second to play. He has 98 points. Rogers throws long to Chamberlain. He shoots. No good. The rebound, Luckenbill. Back to Chamberlain. He shoots up. No good. In and out. The rebound, Luckenbill. Back to Ruckwick.
Lucky for me, Wilt was open, bumped his man off his hip and said, "Woo!" which meant, here I am, and I flipped it to him.
Into Chamberlain.
The people that were there just rushed to court. It was a wild scene.
The most amazing scoring performance of all time. 100 points for the Big Dipper.
It was an exhibition of great art and skill, and that's the way I've always remembered it.
I grabbed a piece of paper and wrote the 100, and we set up this picture, and the guy from the AP got the best picture.
I shook his hand. I saw him holding that piece of paper, but there was no wild celebration. It was just not that big a deal.
The winning and the losing of the game was secondary to New York. Their whole object was not to let Wilt get 100 points.
Time we got to 2 minutes to go, it was a sure thing. There must have been 46 or 47 seconds remaining in the game. People just ran out of the stands just to touch Wilt, just to be there.
To watch Wilt Chamberlain every single Sunday. The Big Dipper.
The sense of size in Wilt Chamberlain is the essence of the man. It's just there. You just feel like you're in the presence of some giant.
You really can't tell how big he is until you actually see him. He shook my hand and my hand disappeared, and I'm just going, I don't believe this.
Averaged 50 points a game for a full season. 50 points a game.
Cast off a shot that appeared to be 3 feet above the basket, and Wilt jumped up and caught this ball with one hand. The referee called goaltending, and I hollered at him, "How could you call that goaltending?" And he says, "Guy, what I just saw is not humanly possible."
He never fouled out of a professional basketball game in his entire career.
He was the only guy that could change the landscape in basketball, change the rules. Offensive goaltending, defensive goaltending.
You had to widen the lane. The free throw shooter had to release the ball behind the line. Wilt could take off from the free throw line and dunk the foul shot.
It's almost like the game didn't happen. 100 points, in Hershey, Pennsylvania, in the middle of the winter.
The most amazing scoring performance of all time. 100 points for the Big Zipper.
The students and teachers at West Philadelphia's Overbrook High School have a message they want all to know. They will miss their most famous alumnus. Walking through the halls, Wilt Chamberlain's high school basketball coach, who has returned for the first time in many years to remember his star player.
When was the last time you were here?
1954.
That's 45 years ago.
45 years ago, yeah.
That was Wilt Chamberlain's senior year when the team went 60-1, winning the city championship.
Wow.
Coach Cecil Mosenson made a pilgrimage to the school's gymnasium where Wilt the prodigy played.
In 4 steps, he could go from one end of the court to the other. It's incredible. Brings back a lot of emotional memories. Overbrook's very important to him. And wherever he went, he always wore an Overbrook jacket, or he wore something that identified Overbrook. And of all the years and all the wonderful experiences he's had, and I'm sure Vince will tell you this, that the Overbrook years to him were probably the greatest years.
This is the cover of a book that is now out, written by Cecil Mosenson. It is about Wilt Chamberlain. It all began with Wilt. Cecil was 22 years of age, the coach at Overbrook High School in 1952, and there is a classic shot. What's this shot? As we welcome you, by the way, Cecil, to the program. This shot of you and Wilt.
This shot of Wilt and me is he was being presented with an award and a plaque from the Philadelphia Inquirer, and there was another person on the picture that we sliced off.
That wouldn't be Phil Jasner, would it? Phil Jasner was
I was just a child.
You were just a child, a mere child.
Phil Jasner was a counselor at my camp.
Is that right?
A few years ago.
That is true. A few years ago.
So, give us some anecdotes about what you bring in this book, and kind of letting everybody know about Wilt, the player, from his early years.
Well, there are a lot of anecdotes that people don't know about. Little things that happened between Wilt and me. As he was a junior, he was creating some problems and trying to grow up. There was one time when he scored 71 points against a team, and we were going to play that team again. And in practice, they were fooling around. And I said to Wilt, "You can't fool around." And at 22, I was different then. I've mellowed. And he said, "He didn't do anything." And I said, "Well, you're off the team." And I asked him to leave the practice, and we practiced without him. And I went to the principal, and I said, "I just threw Wilt Chamberlain off the team. You better prepare a press release." I think he was ready to faint.
How about a riot? Not a press release. How about a riot?
And he said, "Well, let's wait till Monday."
Yeah.
And Monday, I passed him in the hallway,